Sorry.
I'm going to talk about, first of all, prostate cancer basics, so that we're all on the same page. Then I'll talk about my experience, so you know why I say what I'm saying. Then we'll talk about questions that you should be able to answer, and that all men should be able to answer. And then we'll go to your questions. Next slide. About 80% of the average male, 80% of them will have prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is approximately equal to you're having prostate cancer is approximately equal to your age. And they've done autopsies on people, and this is what that's based on. So if you live to be 100, there's 100% chance you'll have prostate cancer.
Did I jump? Back up, I jumped. All right.
Only 17% of people are identified with prostate cancer. That means 63% of us will have prostate cancer and never know it. That's because most prostate cancer is invisible and doesn't need to be treated. However, 6% of it is potentially fatal. And about 2.5% of us die of prostate cancer. But it's my belief that large majority of those get poor medical treatment, because most doctors really don't know what to do. Next. My experience, I was initially diagnosed in 2001. And I was treated with breaking therapy, which is permanent seeds inserted into the prostate. And I have since learned that because I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I should have had multiple therapies, but my doctor didn't recommend that, and I didn't know enough to ask about it. I had a recurrence in 2006, and the scans available at that time could not find out where the cancer was. And when my urologist recommended that I do hormone therapy, I said, well, I'm going to get a second opinion. And he said, well, you'll get as many opinions as doctors you see. And I went to Stanford, UC San Francisco, Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, and Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And they did all say something different. And at that point, I realized these doctors don't know what they're talking about. Because what they're doing is they're recommending what they are expert in, not what is best for you. But anyway, since I couldn't find out where the tumors were, I did hormone therapy, and I changed my lifestyle. I became a vegan, basically. And later I became a pesca vegan. I eat seafood. I'm a vegan diet, but I eat seafood. I also kicked up my exercise, and I started meditation and yoga. Then in 2009, I had another recurrence. And at that point in time, there were no scans in this country to identify where the tumors were, but I went to the Netherlands because they had a scan there, and I identified about 10 metastatic lymph nodes in my pelvis. And I had those irradiated in UC San Francisco. And I also did hormone therapy again. And I continued my lifestyle changes. And then in 2016, I had another recurrence. And by then, there was scans in this country that could identify where they were. I had 3 metastatic lymph nodes in my abdomen. And I went down to San Diego and I got proton therapy, intermediate or intensity modulated proton therapy, which was the latest thing. Anyway, next slide. I'm active in 4 prostate cancer support groups, one of which I founded, and I no longer lead it. I led it from 2008 to 2020, and then I turned it over to another guy. But I'm still active in all the groups, and I do lots of prostate cancer research. I get a daily email with lists of research papers which I look at, and I send out notices to various support group leaders, and I attend prostate cancer conferences. Yeah, initial prostate cancer, early prostate cancer is symptoms. And that's why most people have prostate cancer, and they die without knowing they have prostate cancer. There's a test for that, PSA, there's a blood test for screening for prostate cancer, and it's a simple blood test, and I get one of those done every month.
Question, how often they recommend the screening PSA?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
It's also a digital rectal that doctors will do. Next slide. Now, in the past, what the doctors did was they would do a blood test and a digital rectal exam. And if either one of those tests were positive, they would do an unguided biopsy. That means they would just randomly take samples out of your prostate. And if those were positive, they would do CT and Mohs scans to see whether you had metastatic prostate cancer. Next slide. And then if it was localized, they would do surgery or radiation. And if it wasn't localized, they do hormone therapy, and when all that failed, they would go on to chemotherapy. Next slide. Now, this had severe impacts on your quality of life. 50% of the people would have erectile dysfunction. And if you had surgery, it would be immediate. And if it was radiation, you'd get it in about 5 years. It took me 15 years. But then I don't know whether it was old age or radiation or a combination thereof. Anyway, there's also about a 30% chance of urinary incontinence, and you'll wind up wearing pads for the rest of your life. And then some people wind up with bowel incontinence, which is not a nice thing. Then there are other morbidities like increased risk of diabetes, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. All right. Questions that you need to be able to answer, and your loved ones need to be able to answer. Are you more prone to prostate cancer than the average person? In other words, are you not one of these people whose prostate cancer is equal to the decade of your life? And that would be, do you have family history of prostate cancer? Or are you an African American, because they have a higher probability of prostate cancer, and if it is diagnosed, it's typically more advanced. Now, I personally believe that is because they get poor health care than the average person. One way of telling you have a higher probability is to go get genome test, and then just a simple swallow of your saliva, and you get a genome test, and they will look for mutated genes and find out whether you have a higher probability of having prostate cancer, among other things. The other thing is, then you should say, should I get a prostate PSA test and a DRE test? Now, knowledge is power. However, if you're one of these people who would say, oh my God, cancer, get the hell out of me. I don't care. Damn the torpedoes, get out of me. You probably should think about maybe I shouldn't get tested because the consequences of getting treated be worse than the consequences of not getting treated 98% of the time. But if you're one to say, yeah, I can take the information and do what is possibly the best thing for me, then you should get tested initially at age 40. And then annually after that at age 45. Then if either one of those tests become positive, then you should probably go get an MPRI scan. An MPRI means multi-parameter MRI scan of the prostate. And this has a very good probability of identifying high-risk prostate cancer and a low probability of identifying low-risk prostate cancer, which doesn't need to be treated. Then there are other tests that you go get to further refine the results of the PSA test of the DRE, and decide with your doctor whether you should go ahead and get a biopsy or not. And if you have a biopsy, the current thing to do is to use the results from the MPRI scan and do what they call a target biopsy. In the past, what they did was they would systematically take random samples out of your prostate. With the targeted biopsy, they will take the results of the MPRI and try to zero in on the lesions that they saw on the MPRI. Then you need to decide whether you should have a genomic test of the biopsy results. Now, if the biopsy results come back and you're very high risk, you probably don't need to do that. But if you come back and it's low risk, there's a chance that the cancer is going to be more aggressive than the biopsy results of the pathology results of the biopsy results would show. If you get a biopsy and you get a pathology result, you definitely want to get a second opinion, because determining the results of the pathology is subjective. And the guru of biopsies, prostate cancer biopsies, is Jonathan Epstein at Johns Hopkins. And he says that when he gets these things, 20% of them are wrong. The initial guy who did them, and typically they're lower grade than what he would say they are. Next slide. Then the next thing you got to find out is what is the state, which means where is it? How is it confined to the prostate, or is it escaped out of the prostate? And is it local to the prostate bed area, or is it more extended out into the lymph nodes and the chromosomes? And you can do this by scans. And typically, the scans that are available today, the traditional CT and bone scans, they would only identify tumors about a ½ inch in diameter. And the modern scans will go down to a couple of millimeters. And so you definitely want to have the latest and greatest scan. And not, if the doctor's relying only on a CT or bone scan, you gotta find another doctor. Then who's on your medical team? Prostate cancer is the only cancer where I know that you aren't immediately referred to a medical oncologist. Medical oncologists are cancer experts. But traditionally, when you have, if your general practitioner or your primary care physician says, oh, you need to go see your urologist. Urologist is not a prostate cancer expert. And it's okay if you don't have high risk prostate cancer because what he does, no matter what he does, is probably okay. But if you have high risk prostate cancer, you definitely need to see a medical oncologist. And then you can add other people to your team, like the urologist or a radiation oncologist, as needed. Then you need to decide what your treatment needs to be. Now, you need to become an expert of prostate cancer, of your own prostate cancer, because the doctors are going to have their interest in part. This is what I've always done. This will be good for you, but it may not be. And so you need to find out what all the options are and be able to discuss these options knowledgeably with your doctor. Lifestyle. June Chan at UC San Francisco. She is head of the epidemiology department at UC San Francisco. She's done clinical trials that shows that changing your lifestyle can reduce your probability of prostate cancer by 60%. If you could find a pill that reduces it like 60%, you wouldn't hesitate in taking it. But people typically don't go out and exercise just because they're told to do it. But she found that vigorous exercise for at least 3 hours a week will do this. Will reduce your probability of having prostate cancer or of having a recurrence. Second of all, finally, when you have any treatment, you want to find an artiste. You do not want to be on the learning curve of some doctor. And you ask a doctor what his probabilities of adverse outcomes like erectile function, incontinence, etc. And if he hesitates or won't give you those information, that's a red flag. Go find somebody else. And the numbers he does give should be equal to or comparable to the best doctors in the country. Post-treatment. After your treatment, you need to change your lifestyle, as I've said, and you need to go on to a maintenance program to minimize the probability of a cancer recurring. Next slide. The probability of the cancer will recur is 35%. Regardless of your initial treatment and regardless of the initial outcome. That's because even though the pathology would say, oh, there was no serious side effects, there's something that's microscopic in there that's going to raise its head later on. And that's what happens. So you got to monitor your PSA at least every 6 months. There was a fellow in one of my support groups. He had radiation, and after the radiation therapy, his PSA was 0.1. And he's getting his PSA monitored once a year. And he did this for 12 years. 0.1, 0.1. The 13th year, he gets his PSA done, and it's 300. And the doctor says, oh, that must be a fluke. Come back in a month and we'll check it again. A month later, it was 600. Now you take 0.1 and you double it every month. And in a year, you'll get 600. So you need to monitor your PSA at least every 6 months so that it doesn't get away from you.
And that's just in general, correct?
And a recurrence can recur even 20 to 25 years later.
It should be checked.
All right, and then finally, you need to make sure you get the latest scans and tests to find out where the tumors are. And things are changing rapidly all the time. Next slide. There are over 1,000 products, drugs, and procedures that are being developed. Now, the large majority of these will never see the light of day because they won't get past the FDA. Only 5% of the things that start out in the lab get through FDA approval. But things are being added to the arsenal to fight this disease exponentially. Every year, these things are coming out. Next slide. All right, bottom line. Get your PSA screening. See a medical oncologist. Get independent second, third opinions. As I said, you may get different opinions from everybody. And when I got my different opinions from those 4 different cancer centers I went to, a friend of mine who was a medical doctor said, eventually you'll see a common thread in what they say. Well, the common thread for me was, you can't find it, do hormone therapy. And you have to become an expert. You have to do the research. You have to read, and read books, go online, go to support group meetings, and get the latest scans and tests, and find an artiste. Find an artiste. The best way to do that is to go to a support group. Next slide. Modify your lifestyle. As I said, vigorous exercise at least 3 hours a week. Healthy diet. Avoid animal products, red meat and dairy products, added sugars, saturated trans fats, processed foods. And the thing is, if you go the whole 9 yards, you maximize your benefit. If you go 50%, you get half the credit. So do as much as you can. All of it is the best, but some is better than nothing. Meditate and critical sleep. Sleep is critical to your health. Next slide. And then read the best prostate cancer book I ever read is The Key to Prostate Cancer by Mark Schultz. That's the best thing you can read. And then Saving Your Sex Life. Dr. John E. Mahal of Memorial Sloan Kettering. Yeah, Memorial Sloan Kettering. He's written what you have to do before, during, and after treatment to minimize the probability of erectile dysfunction. And then finally, read a book, How Doctors Think, by Dr. Jerome Brueggemann. He is at Harvard. And he tells you why doctors make mistakes and what you can do to counter those mistakes. Next slide. Thank you. Next slide. Question.
I was waiting for the picture.
question. You said you went to the Netherlands. Were they technology more advanced on prostate cancer in the medical field than we were?
There was a scan that was developed in this country. It did not get FDA approval. And it was transferred to the Netherlands. The guy in the Netherlands took up the scan. And so I went to the Netherlands to get that scan. The FDA said, we want you to do more. They have done this testing to basically prove that it was an effective scan. But the FDA says, we want you to do more testing and broaden this to other cancers. And they said, that's just not cost effective for us. It's not financially viable to do that. And so they sold the process offside of barrel to this guy in the Netherlands. And fortunately, my oncologist knew about this. Well, actually, basically anybody who was really active in the prostate cancer field medically knew about it. John.
Unless you're diagnosed with, high levels or whatever, how often will Medicare pay for a PSA test?
I don't know.
I get them done every 3 months, and they pay for it.
But you were diagnosed positive.
Yeah,
And the reason I asked is
I get mine done every month, but
I was diagnosed on the rise, and then I went back in 6 months later and said, I don't want to pay for this. It's not high enough. And then, it took an act of Congress to get that.
well,
paid
of
for.
course, the thing is, you gotta get past the doctor's opinion. If the doctor okays it, you can get paid. And some doctors will say, oh, you don't need one. Well, that might be a sign that you need to go find another doctor.
This was recommended the second time by the doctor specifically.
But any doctor worth his salt is going to allow you to get a PSA test at least every 6 months. Yes.
Well, so 2 questions. Number one, if you had a PSA test and it was low, is your recommendation to have one on a preventative basis every 6 months?
Yes.
Ooh, really? Okay. Number 2, how did you determine by random that you have some symptoms, or did you just randomly find out that you had it?
Oh, what, that I had?
Initially, how did you initially come about?
Well, back in the 90s, I had BPH problems, binary prostate hyperplasia, which is binary swelling of the prostate. So I was seeing a neurologist for that problem. And I was going to see him.
Not to get personal.
Yeah. And he was doing a PSA test every year.
Right.
And in 98, no, 99, my PSA was like 4.8, I think, and he did a PSA test. And the thing is, when you do a biopsy, or I mean, he did a biopsy when I was in 1999. The biopsy samples less than 1% of the prostate. So the probability of missing a tumor is very high if they do a random biopsy.
I had it done, but they just did the blood. Is that insufficient?
So say that again?
I said, I did the PSA test. They how they do the blood panels?
That is the
That's what the PSA is.
Right.
It's only a blood test.
Right, but you said that can that blood test determine the polyps or tumors?
No, the blood test determines your the PSA stands for prostate specific antigen, which is in all prostate cancer, all prostate cells put out PSA. But the cancer cells put out about 10 times more. And so if your PSA is elevated, then, that's a signal that you may have prostate cancer.
Right.
It's not positive. So then they will say, oh, since your PSA is elevated, maybe we ought to do a biopsy and see if you actually have a tumor.
Okay, that's when that.
Yeah, you won't know you have a tumor unless you do a biopsy.
Okay. Because they said it was in the normal range, you know, there wasn't any elevation. Now you're saying that you could go like that and all of a sudden have a spike.
Well, the critical thing is, what is the PSA doubling on? And you can go on to all you do is Google PSA doubling time and the a website for Memorial Sloan Kettering nomogram will pop up, and you can go in there and plug in numbers, it'll tell you what the doubling time is. And if your PSA is doubling higher than every 2 years for 3 successive tests, then you probably want to get a biopsy. The other thing is,
Does that mean it's out of the normal range at that point?
there is no normal range.
Oh, there is.
The doctor may say what normal range is, but there is no normal range.
Oh,
The critical thing is doubling time, and the other critical thing is density. Your PSA density. And the density is your PSA divided by the size of your prostate. Now, when the guy does a ultrasound, they stick a ultrasound probe up your rectum and they look at your prostate with that, and they determine what the size of your prostate is. And you didn't ask me what the size of your prostate is. Now, normal PSA, normal prostate cells put out about 0.1 to 0.15 PSA per cc. So now, if you had 100 cc prostate, if it's 10 or less, that's all normal cells. If it's greater than 15, that's in excess of normal cells, so you probably have prostate. If it's in between 10 and 18, then you got to discuss this with your doctor to see what to do. Yes, sir.
Just one comment, if anybody gets a diagnosis of prostate cancer, call Penn, get linked up with the group that he used to run, because those guys have some experience that you can tell. Good, but one clarification, you didn't ask about going to the methods for the scan, but today, with the new scans that have been approved recently, you wouldn't do that.
The scans available in this country are excellent.
Yeah. The other question I have, you've been at this for 21 years, and yet you've never looked at anything like the new lutetium or the insulinide or any of that stuff. Is that because you have needed it?
That's right. So far, my cancer's been controllable by radiation and hormone therapy, and so I don't need to go into this more exotic stuff. Plus the fact I am not what they call hormone resistant. I'm still sensitive to the things like Lupron, so I'm still controllable by that.
I just have one quick follow-up to Frank was asking about, now, regardless of the PSA test, is there any other physical symptoms that you come up with even prior to PSA, anything else, a signs or?
No.
No, okay.
No,
Right, one other.
it's a sneaky disease because there are no symptoms.
Okay,
And about the only thing you can do is a PSA test at this point in time.
right.
There's no correlation to when you had the colonoscopy colonoscopy and that, right? So, I mean, I guess they check your colon, but there's no correlation to the prostate and colon, right?
No.
And then the other question was, what's the age where it begins to, like you were just talking about probabilities that you might be getting close to that range of having prostate
Well, that's why
cancer
they say start testing at 40.
at 40, okay,
Yeah, because.
And Walt, how young are you now?
Huh?
How young are you?
very young.
And,
Answer that question.
Time's up.
in 5 months, I will be 90.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Wow.
You don't look it.
That's because he eats well, he exercises.
And he
That's right.
exercises very good.
Right.
Oh, my God.
Lifestyle change.
Well, thank
We're
you.
not, no binding was up.
I know, you
Yeah,
competition.
any other questions?
Well, you've earned your medical.
Walt, thank you.
Thank you.